morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting. I am to introduce the speaker of the day, Mario, a good old friend of mine since many, many years. And Mario is not a typical San Migueliensis. He is involved in, I don't know how many things, but many things. His main job, of course, is related to El Chaco. And that he's going to tell us about El Chaco, so I'm not going to say anything about that. What is interesting about Mario is his education is a master in sociology. Has not much to do with what he is doing, but I would tell you that if you go to El Chaco and you get a tour around with Mario, you will learn something you didn't know. It's incredible the amount of knowledge that he presents, and is fabulous. At the same time, he involves himself also in the development of our town. He tried to become the mayor last time. That didn't manage, but you never know. But you will see someday, you will see him somewhere in town, but always he will be in connection with El Chaco, in development of El Chaco, which is a very special task. And I admire the way El Chaco is being developed. It's wonderful to see this development. The one side is fully developed, the other side of the pond is to be developed, but I am sure we will hear more about that. But please join me in welcoming Mario as our speaker of today. Welcome, Mario.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I want to take time to thank all the Rotary Midday Board for this invitation, which I am very grateful to have the opportunity to share all the information related with my activity in El Charco de Ingenio. And it's really great to see many friends that have accumulated throughout the years. So thank you. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad. Let me set up my presentation. I understand it's a 40-minute activity, so I'll try to do it in 25, 30 minutes so we can have some time so we can develop a dialogue and answer any questions that might occur. So can you guys see my presentation? Good, perfect. Let me share with you this presentation that I did a couple of months back. And though whatever word or text you may find is in Spanish, it's going to be I'll be translating most of what we'll see here. We'll see a lot of images, basically. So let me tell you that the theme, the title is El Charco del Ingenio, Rebeldía y Resistencia Biocultural. Rebellion and Biocultural Resistance. Mexico is one of the 5 mega diverse countries in the world. And this is because of the diverse of species, of landscape, a small part of the world with other countries. Well, Mexico is a mega diverse country. And what does this mean? It means that with these other 5 or 6 countries in the world, just in these small handful of countries, you will find 70% of the world diversity of different species. That is amazing. That is something that we as Mexicans are very proud of, our biodiversity in the country. Here we see a information regarding this column here, where you'll see the countries and its biodiversity, its place in biodiversity, in plants, vascular plants, mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and you see Mexico in 5th place. You see Mexico occupying 2nd place in terms of number of species of reptiles, in birds, which is also very rich. You see 1,150 species. And these 5 countries are Brazil, Colombia, China, Indonesia, and Mexico. So we're in the top 5 mega diverse countries. But what do botanical gardens really do? Well, we guard plant collections that have been collected throughout programmed expeditions, and in our case, under federal authorized expeditions and permits, to be able to collect plants that are of our interest, of our collection, and they are brought back, they are studied, they are reproduced. And I am happy to say that we here as El Charco de Ingenio, our collections of succulents of major distribution in Mexico. And the plants that we are reproducing are basically those that are under the Mexican federal norm of endangered species. So we do a lot of that work that is sometimes not seen because it's basically behind the curtains, but also much of that scientific activity that we carry out. We do observation, we do studies, we do reports, we do environmental education, and of course, in terms of El Charco de Ingenio, we carry out conservation and ecosystem restoration. Here we have a map of the distribution of the major botanical gardens in Mexico. The closest one to San Miguel de Allende is here in Cadereyta, which I recommend to visit whenever, pretty soon when everything goes back to the new normality. And Mexico City, Puebla, Culiacan, Sinaloa are one of the major important botanical gardens. Also, the one in Jalapa is a beautiful place, which I recommend, and they occupy the presidency of the National Association of Botanical Gardens, which I want to share with you that if everything goes out right, this year towards the months of October, here in El Charco del Ingenio, we will be hosting the national meeting of botanical gardens. So we are very proud of this achievement, and we will be sharing more information as the year goes on, because during this 2021, we are achieving our first 30 years, and we are very proud of all that. Let me show you this map here. This is an old map that was probably painted by a Tlacuilo, an indigenous person who registered information of the region. This map is aged at 1580. And you can see in this map, in that yellow square, that a mill was already mentioned or geo-referenced, and that mill has to do with the old mill that we guard the remains of the old mill here in El Charco del Ingenio. Let me remind you that in the 16th century, any infrastructure that was used to generate energy using the force of water was called ingenio. From there, the word ingeniería, engineering, ingenio, ingenious, and also ingenio, which meant mill. And because of the mill and the natural spring, which is also in the bottom part of our canyon, the pond, the place was named already 500 years ago as the pond near the mill, El Charco del Ingenio. That's where our name comes from. And that's why I thought it was important to mention all this information, because it is part of our cultural heritage, and that's part of our biocultural resistance as well. Here, let me show you pictures of the first year that El Charco del Ingenio received and collaborated with the indigenous groups of the region to dedicate El Charco del Ingenio. I'd like to point out that the The doors to El Charco de Ingenio were opened on July 11th of 1991. And on that specific date, we experienced in this part of the country a total solar eclipse. So while the eclipse lasted only 6 minutes, at the climax of the eclipse, with the blessing and the participation of the indigenous groups, the ribbons were cut and the doors were open to the public. That's why when you visit El Charco de Ingenio, Plaza de los Cuatro Vientos, you will find a codice established on the ground with all these elements representing the interpretation of the world, the communities that have inhabited this territory, this side of the property. And you can see on the what would be the south side, where we now have our access, our observatory, and this was a rainy season, and you can see there was pretty much nothing at that time. Over 30 years, we've managed to turn this into a beautiful forest and that has turned into, of course, also into a refuge for wildlife, and we are just so happy with what we've achieved in 30 years. This is another old picture of the plants that were rescued from Simapan, a place where their current habitat is underwater because a dam was built. So we had the opportunity to rescue about 500 of these plants, and this is how they were transported and brought here to El Charco, to their new home, which I may say they are very happy. Here, we're seeing friends that have helped us in the past to establish our collection. On the top part, on the left side, let me point out Charles Glass, one of the world's most important, knowledgeable persons in cacti, who happened to come through San Miguel de Allende when César, Arias, Federico, Gama, Leopoldo Estrada were with the dream of putting together a botanical garden. So destiny brought them together, and they started to work towards a collection, collecting different plants throughout the country through, of course, federal permits, and bringing them to El Charco de Ingenio and begin this construction, this area that you now know as the Conservatory of Mexican Plants. These are the images of how this project began. Very interesting. And now you will see it very, very much consolidated. Our plants were very much in pots when they were brought back, and that's how they were exhibited. And many of you who have been here for 30 years can remember that time when you would visit El Charco and you would say, well, there's really not much to see. But we've transformed, of course, the place into a magical spot. And what we were seeing here on the top part and the bottom left, right, is the Conservatory of Mexican Plants. And let's see what this place looks like after 30 years. This is what we've built and put together as our Conservatory of Mexican Plants. And let me point out that you should visit El Charco, because just surrounding El Conservatorio de Plantas Mexicanas, we are putting together an agavaceae garden that is really just turning out the most beautiful thing. This is the Conservatory of Mexican Plants, which we dedicated to Charles Glass as well. This is where San Miguel de Allende is located. I thought I had taken this one out, but I'll leave it anyway. And let me show you what is El Charco del Ingenio, or the ecological preservation zone of El Charco del Ingenio, which was declared in 2006. In 1991, the property of El Charco is inaugurated as the 67, approximately 150 acres of El Charco del Ingenio. But as I mentioned, in 2006, the Zona de Preservación Ecológica, the ecological preservation zone, is declared, and that integrates all the area that is within the green part, which are the properties of Presa del Obraje and the surrounding area, El Charco del Ingenio, Parque Landeta, and of course, part of what today is Parque Bicentenario. In the 2006 declaration, also a buffer zone of 300 meters surrounding the natural protected area was declared or established as well. And we've been very happy with that achievement because it is definitely an opportunity to emphasize the importance of maintaining the structure and the function of the ecosystems. In 2012, all this area is recognized and acknowledged in a planning instrument called Programa de Ordenamiento Ecológico Territorial, and it is established as one unit of planning. So you would not be able to make modifications in all this area only if it follows the procedures for established in 2012 in the public policy instrument. And in 2014, we managed, because of the impact of the conservation process, to certify the 150 acres of El Charco as a natural protected area of federal importance. This is something that we celebrated very much at its moment, and we emphasize that the results of conservation have been just so important that the federal government decided to acknowledge this space as a hotspot to store, to protect, and that was in 2014. However, in 2020, we had terrible experience of the local authority trying to change everything you see here into this. What this means? That in the new planning instrument, it was planned to leave only El Charco de Ingenio, it's 150 acres, as a protected area, a federal protected area, but allow in the other parts of the planning unit as an activity that would allow human urban development. I'm sure many of you have heard that we had to carry out a legal action in order to protect, and I'm proud to say that the judge reached a statement that everything must remain as it was planned in 2012, as what we're seeing in this part. So that is an achievement of the civil society. That is an achievement of the community. And thank you very much for your support throughout all this process, because it is important to point out that we're driven by the community, and that is much of what we're doing. I didn't put that circle there, so if anyone put that, please help me eliminating that. And of course, with a great project comes great responsibilities. And this is much of what we've been doing for our collection, establishing, studying, collecting seeds, doing pollination, germinating plants, studying here the seeds that we collect under a microscope. Here is part of our scientific staff in our laboratory that this is the area where not many people enter, where we have the laboratory and part of the collection. We also, of course, carry out a specific and strict process of studying all the seeds, developing all the germination to develop the plants, and of course, to raise these little critters in order to be able to transform them and help them out to establish in these smaller pots that will allow us to put them in different processes or projects that we have donated. Here's many of the activities or wildlife that I'd like to point out, because as I mentioned, after 30 years of conservation, the place has turned into a refuge, a sanctuary of wildlife. And right there on the top left, you will find a gray-tailed fox that we have pictured through our scientific cameras here on the property. Also, of course, possum, of course, bobcat here crossing the property. Also, many of you may know our bird book, which is important. Much of the scientific work that takes place in terms of botanical illustration, scientific illustration, and just so many activities that we have carried out in order to democratize all this scientific information that we generate, and of course develop a strong environmental education process to sensitize people of the importance of our natural resources. And of course, not only our natural resources, but of course our cultural heritage, our cultural practices that take place and that go by the hand with, of course, our natural resources. You've seen many of our ceremonies, of the activities that take place, specifically during the months of July when the festivity of the Holy Cross of El Charco de Ingenio takes place. So these are manifestations of different activities that take place here in the Charco de Ingenio. But we have, of course, a lot of challenges. And our major challenge is called, yes, climate change. And people, people are saying, well, it's raining in the desert. Well, it's global climate change. Well, it's snowing in Florida. Well, yes, it's, global climate change. And this is happening. Everyone says it's global climate change. I'd rather say that it is the effect of our patterns of production and consumption. So we need to understand that we are not responsible. We are the ones responsible for this activity. We are the ones that have managed to change everything in our planet in just the past 50, 70 years. And we need to really make a change in our patterns of production and consumption. Our children are my grandchildren that I still do not have. I believe they deserve a better world. So we definitely have to carry out activities to adapt and resist to these new conditions that are going to appear. We do much of the construction here in the area with local materials. We try to use the less as possible cement. We use adobe. We do our water harvesting. We have a small 530,000 liter of rainwater cistern. We do these shading areas with natural and local materials. We integrate these local materials in part of the architecture and construction and the structures of our offices. This is part of our laboratory where much of the other activities of propagation take place. We also, of course, have adapted our spaces to be reused for our different activities, and we collaborate with local co-ops and with a fair trade approach. And we also, of course, generate all the electric energy that is used here for El Charco de Ingenio. And we do these beautiful spaces with local materials that, besides the local materials, we are also guarding the local knowledge that is important to use in order to adapt to the near future. But we reach cycles also after 30 years. And this, I am sure many of you remember, was our reception, an area that was built about 25 years ago and was demanding a lot of maintenance. And of course, we had to bring it down because instead of rebuilding that beautiful thatching roof, we decided that we were in the conditions to grow. So yes, it was terrible for us to see how part of our history, how part of our activities took place in order to put down. But being able to say goodbye is an opportunity to grow. And this is our project that we are, if you visited recently at Charco de Ingenio, we are constructing, we are building our new Accents Visitor Center. And these are the renders of pretty much what you will be seeing once we've finished. We are at 80% of our construction. And we are just so happy with what we've been achieving with, of course, the support of all the community, because this is something that we've been able to do with the support of many of you seeing this project today. The architecture is just fabulous. And this is part of what will be also our Museum of Natural History. It's going to be amazing. This is going to be the inside of part of the museum, where we will be able to do permanent expedition. These area and inside will be able to be raised whenever it is necessary to be able to have a temporary exposition. And this is somehow more or less how all this process will be working. The permanent exhibition, this is just an example of much of the information that will be set of the area. Information of geology, fauna, flora, history, water. It is really going to be something that will boom San Miguel de Allende, not only the Charco de Ingenio, into a more of a scientific, intellectual point of view approach, so that also whatever visitors we may have can be, of course, not only in sense of a tourism that consume, but more of an opportunity to be sensitized and to understand where we are at. Finally, I'd like to point out that in the early 70s, the satellite system in Mexico, in the world, generated these first images of San Miguel de Allende. That green spot that you see in the center is basically the image that I've outlined from the 1972 Landsat image, and that's San Miguel de Allende. That's the urban area. Hold on to your socks, because this is what it looks like now. We've easily extended our urban area approximately 800%. And much of that has to do with the extension on the horizontal side of the city, and more in the past 15 years with the idea of developing housing projects all over that have really had an impact on our natural resources. When we talk about water, when we talk about our aquifer, this is much of the problem that we are inheriting, and that we definitely need to understand that global climate change is not something that happens just by itself. We as a human species are responsible for our patterns of production and consumption. And this is much of what we've pointed out, that we should not just sit back and think that let someone else take care of it. We need to be in charge. We need to be in better communication, and we all definitely need to come together, because we do not have a planet B. We only have planet Earth, and we only have ourselves at this moment. So we all need to come together and in favor of the future generations, really take action for the future. Thank you very much. I'd like to end with this quote of Ricardo Flores Magón, who once said, "Rebellion is life, submission is death." Thank you very much.
Mario, that was fabulous. I had no idea how deep you went out there on your activism. That's wonderful. I'm going to turn it over to Ivar because you have some questions.
That's right. I agree with what you were saying, Gary. It is fascinating. Even if I have been many, many times to El Chaco and even listened to Mario telling about it, I learned new things today. And it's amazing the way in which you have been able to develop in El Chaco and been fighting for the area. That is fantastic. But again, it's open now. If anyone have any questions,
We
I
have
will look to see if there is some.
No, there are some questions in the chat box.
Yes,
We have,
I've seen one question in the chat box. Was any solar panels integrated into the new visitor center? Is that possible? Add that in the future. Mary, what do you say to that?
No, there are no new pedals. There are no new panels added. With the ones that I've shown, we have sufficiency to generate the energy for all El Charco project. So there are no new panels. The panels that are currently being used are right here on top of my office. So that's and they are sufficient to generating all the energy that we are using. And no, because in terms of the visual impact, those bóvedas that we are building are just so beautiful, and they would just, you know, they would just be pretty much ugly with those solar panels on top. But however, we've solved that with the amount of solar panels we're using currently.
I have there's no more mentioned here. I have a question to you myself, which is the pond. Of course, sometimes I have witnessed a time when you could walk across because there was no water. And I'm very much aware that in the old days, the water, the river was even making broader work. And so there was a lot of water. And then little by little, so the farmers along the river has sort of stolen the water. So what is the future going to be about getting enough water to El Chaco?
Well, I think you're making reference towards the river that once developed, also a canyon. It is important to understand when you see the canyon and the two dams right there in El Charco. We have to understand that what we're seeing right there at the islands or as part of the dam when there is water running, that was a permanent river. And that allows us to understand the amount of flow that would come down in any time when the soil in the center and high part of the watershed is saturated, which, and even though it's not saturated, I mean, if we continue to fill the center and high part of our watershed with cement, with industrial companies, with new housing development projects, well, San Miguel will not be needing a heavy rain to be flooded in the center of town. Just with a small sprinkle of 1-2 days, we will have severe problems. And this is something that really needs to be pointed out. And I'm glad that we're talking about this. There definitely has to be some sort of a project that demands for all the soil and the humidity to be retained in the center and high part of a watershed. And that means that we have to have specific conservation projects in all those areas so that we can prevent whatever flooding or drastic actions that may be caused by water. So this area is even though it's pretty much dry one time of the year, it has a strong importance because it works as a wetland. And even though it may be dry on the top part, in the bottom, it retains sufficient humidity that helps definitely our aquifer. and much of the wildlife and flora that are associated in the area. But
Okay.
we
There's a lot
definitely,
of more questions are coming in, Mario. So is the Charco open to the public right now? And if so, what safeguards are recommended?
yes, you know, we are a project of a federal jurisdiction. However, a couple months back, we have opened and we have specific requirements. People must understand that, yes, even though it is a wide, big open space, in terms of interest of protecting our visitors and our staff, we do demand, it is mandatory that a mouth mask be worn at all time. And our schedule is from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. And so if people decide to come visit, please come in small groups and bring a hat, bring good shoes, and bring water.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another question, will there be any kind of spring equinox celebration at El Chaco this year?
Oh, you pointed out something very interesting. Last year, we decided to cancel our concert. And this year, yes, there will be on Saturday 20th, an opera, which will be just flabbergasting. That's my new word, so I'm using it as much as I can. It'll be flabbergasting. So, and
What do you mean by opera? What? Because you cannot make a whole entire opera there. What do we mean by opera?
yes, it's an opera of 11 singers, musicians that will have an opera called Grillos y Chicharras, which is being shown in different parts of the country. So we have this opportunity to have this group who is helping El Charco and to carry out during this 30th anniversary, the activity at the bottom of the canyon, which is just spectacular. And if anyone wants to visit, well, you better hurry because there will only be 150 tickets.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question, will there be a meeting room where we could perhaps have one of our Rotary meetings?
Yes, yes. In the area of the natural museum, in that structure, it will also have a capacity to carry out meetings, which we expect in this October. We will be carrying out our national meeting of botanical gardens, where we expect to easily sit about 130 people.
Okay, we're not that big, not yet, but maybe. And here's another question. What is the future relationship between the civil society effort and the municipal government support or lack of in terms of maintaining the zone as a protected area? I know you had to engage in a huge fight to maintain this status as developers were moving their contact to build on the area. Has this problem stopped or does
everyone needs to remain on guard. And there is a sentence that the judge already established, and that it states that this 380 hectares of protected area need to maintain themselves as its declaration in 2006 and the legal instrument of 2012. And it has established that for the planning instrument that the city developed during 2020, they are to acknowledge this as in the past instruments. So this is very important. This is a very important achievement, not of El Charco, but of the civil society, because we are talking of common wealth, of common goods, natural resources that are impacting in the life of everyone. So we will be needing for the civil society to always participate, to always be close, because of course, there in the future, there will always exist different interests that are not aligned with the civil society, but personal economic or interests of different groups. So please always stay close.
Thank you for that. Uh, where in general can we get information about the opera event?
Okay, you can go to our webpage, or there are three ways. You can check on our webpage, and from there you can link to the newsletter of March. And you can also follow us on Facebook. So there we've been posting information, and please check all those three sites, and you will receive information for the opera.
Thank you, Mary. I think that comes to the close of the questions we have for you right now. Thank you very much. It was a marvelous presentation you gave. Very, very interesting indeed. Thank you. And we'll go back to our president. Back to you, Gary.
All right. We are pleased to present the certificate of appreciation to you, Mario, for your presentation. A donation of 10 polio immunizations will be made in your honor to the End Polio Now campaign.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to hear these collaborations, this will of so many warm-hearted people. I mean, I with this COVID situation and with global climate change, you know, sometimes we really just want to throw in the towel. But you know, it's these things that we see that makes us believe in humanity more and more. And I think much more of these actions really need to be done. And so I'm very grateful for everything that is happening. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be here today and share this information, and to be able to salute and say hi to many of my good friends, and of course, hopefully make new friends as well.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any announcements from any Rotary members before we close? All right, thank you very much. We'll see you all next week, and have a good day. Adios.